In this video, we will proceed talking about drawing in AutoCAD, that is vector graphics and shapes and lines, polylines, and curves that we can create here in AutoCAD. So in the previous video, we started with the line, polyline, circle, and arc, and also we explained extra features about the selection and additional features and tools that are really handy and helpful in AutoCAD. So the first thing I'm going to show you here it's about selection again. So when we create many shapes and we start to populate and fill our sheet here, our workspace, this is gonna probably result in some overlapping and some really close objects. So we can use a feature here in AutoCAD, which is down here. We will also talk about some extra feature from the bottom toolbar here, or I call these switches because you can turn them on and off. So this one here, for example, it's turned off when we first start AutoCAD, but I think this is pretty useful. So if we activate it, now if I click here, you can see that if I am above the circle, well, he understands that I want to select the circle, and here the line. But what if I am kind of a middle ground there where I can actually select both in that area? Well, if I click now to select, it's gonna ask me which element I want to select, if the circle or the line or none, or maybe both. So I think this is a pretty interesting feature, and it's pretty similar to what we find in Rhinoceros or Rhino 3D. This is a feature that can help you when you need to select things. Now another one, and then we will get to drawing and come back here later, is this one here, which is quick properties. Now we talked about the quick property panel coming from the right click pop-up menu. So if we right click an object, we can say, okay, let me see here some information about the circle. So right click, quick properties. And I can see here again, like the radius, diameter, circumference, area. So these are really important information to study my object and also to measure. So what if I want that to be always appearing? Now, if you click there, you can turn this switch on. By default, I think this is off. So now that it's on, every time I'm gonna click on something, that quick properties is gonna appear. But be careful because it's gonna appear on that about that object that you are selecting. But if you select more objects, it's gonna be like everything. So the common parameters only are gonna be displayed, and then you have this drop-down menu where you can actually select the arc or the polylines and so on. So another important thing you can see here if a polyline is closed or not from the properties. So sometimes it's useful, sometimes it's a little bit annoying. You need to understand when you need to turn these switches down here on and off, and we will see more later. Let's continue to draw. Let's create a rectangle first. So we will start with a rectangle, and this is just like selecting or creating a line, except that when we specify first corner and the opposite corner, we are creating a rectangle. And again, we have dynamic inputs, which are by default turned on, but you can also turn them off, or maybe you turn them off without even noticing, but these are really important in my opinion. So this is why they are already turned on. Now, if I create again the rectangle, you can see that I don't have those little tags with the numbers anymore. We've been using those since the beginning of the course, and these are really important in my opinion because they will help you to create a line or any other thing with the length that you want. Now let's turn them again on, and let's go back to the rectangle, and now you can see those tags again, and I can say, okay, I want to do a door, for example. So I know that a door is about 80 centimeters large, so it's going to be 800 actually, because remember always that we are in millimeters, and always remember the units that you're using. And so a door, it's also about 220 centimeters high, and again, it's going to be 2,200 millimeters. And press enter. Now this is a door. Now it's pretty easy to create a door with a rectangle because we can just assign those thanks to the dynamic inputs. But also, let me show you here, you can always check down below the various options that you have. For example, here we can set a thickness, we can set a width, we can set a fillet and a chamfer. Now we're going to talk about the others in another lesson, but I want to show you here the fillet. So for example, right now I've created a door, but what if I want something more rounded like a smartphone? So if I use fillet, I will fillet the corners of this shape. So always read what is appearing in front of you. It's telling me specify fillet radius for the rectangle. So when I create, starting from the fillet option down in the command bar, it's gonna directly ask me for the radius. Now, let's say that I want 1 centimeter radius, or let's say, half centimeters. So I'm gonna set this to 5, which gonna mean 5 millimeters, and press enter. And now I'm gonna draw a little smartphone here. So I'm gonna click and drag, and there's my smartphone. Now you can see that I can zoom in and zoom out with my scroll wheel, and the more I get smaller with this rectangle, the more I will see the radius there. Now be careful, because if the radius is smaller than the actual size of a side of the rectangle, that's gonna disappear. So it will not appear because it doesn't have enough space to be inserted in this shape. So be careful about that. And so this could be the shape of my smartphone. Now let's move to the next one, which is the chamfer rectangle. So again, I'm gonna start with the rectangle, and well, also what should I do if I want to go back to the original rectangle creation method? Well, in this case, I need to go back to fillet and set this to 0. I can set it also down there. You can see I've pressed 0 in my keyboard and press enter. And now if I create a rectangle, it's gonna be with standard corners and not rounded corners. And I can do also a square here, pretty easy. So this is 100. I will type 100 here as well and press enter. So this is a perfect square. And let's move on. Again, rectangle. This time I'm gonna do the chamfer. And with the chamfer, I have two dimensions. So the first one is like the height, and the other is the width of the chamfer. But we're gonna make it even. We're gonna make it the same. So let's type again like 1. Press enter, and then it's already telling me if I want 1 also for the second distance, and I say yes, okay, I want 1 and 1, and then click and drag, and this is the chamfered rectangle right here, or chamfer square, depending what you want to do. So these are some pretty interesting options that you have with the rectangle, but once again, I suggest you always look down there what you find in the command bar, what are the options, and maybe try them out and follow the instructions. Once you understand that, everything is pretty easy. You can draw anything pretty easy. So let's do now a little bit of polygons. Now polygons are can be composed by many sides. Now a polygon has to have at least 3 sides. So if I press 3, and also another important option if I want to inscribe this in a circle or circumscribes about a circle. Well, this means that I'm actually creating this like if it was a circle, because I'm using a radius starting from the middle there. But well, this is not a circle obviously, but it's a triangle. So it's a polygon with 3 sides. Now, if I use an actual circle right there, to create again the same polygon. There you go. So it's going to have 3 sides. Press enter, and then it's going to specify the center, And there you go. If I want to get the snap to the center of a circle, I need to roll over the circle itself, and it's going to highlight that green snap. Now, again, we're going to talk about snaps later. They are also down there, and usually they are activated. This is the snaps. Okay. And now I can say inscribed in a circle. So if I draw this triangle, you can see that it will be always inside that circle unless I go further than the actual radius. So that can be placed perfectly inside. Now let's continue here with some other example. Always with Polygon, we can then of course create a square by adding 4 sides. And again, always we need to point out if you want to make it inside or outside a circle. Now we can use an extra feature which is ortho. For example, here if I want to place this real quick and I want to place it perfectly orthogonal, I can press Shift and then click. Now this is a feature that you can also activate and deactivate down here, ortho mode, or you can also press F8. Now some of these switches can be turned on and off by pressing F8 or F10 or other. And also here again you have the snap. Now ortho mode is similar to the snap because it will let you work more precise. So for example, if I need to draw lines, now I can only go vertical and horizontal, and that's it. So this is pretty good for architecture and design, or when you need to create straight lines, straight graphics, orthogonal graphics. Okay, then we will turn it off because otherwise we will not have the same freedom to create objects as we used to do. Now let's move to another polygon. Let's create a pentagon. So I'm going to press 5, and again, sometimes you can also decide to not to create something from the center. So always look down there if there is some extra option. Now in this case, I can create the shape with the edge, so I'm gonna, or the side, so I'm gonna create the side here is gonna perfectly match the other side there. Now you can also move things by clicking on the edges, but be careful because here you will find again the middle grip and the corners. So this is similar to the polyline. When you create a shape, it's like you are creating a closed polyline. So you can then go inside here and change this, stretch it. You can convert this to an arc, or you can add vertices, and so on. So it's just like, again, working with polylines. Now also polyline, when you create a polyline, then you can close it up right there. And if you go down, you will see that it has a lot of options also. So again, the width, the length, undo, off width, close, arc. Now if you click, if you see here, you can notice that the first letters are highlighted, so they are in blue. So if I press C or H, it's gonna have a different outcome. So if I press C or click here, I will close the shape. So if I now right click and go to the quick properties, it's gonna tell me here that yes, it's closed. And also of course the other shapes here. Right click, quick properties, closed, yes. And again, it's showing me that this is a polyline actually. Okay, let's exit. And so I think this is enough for the polygon. Some extra features you can try it yourself. They are pretty easy to understand once you know where to see here. Then we have the ellipse, but it's again pretty similar to the circle, except that we don't have only one radius, we have 2 radius. And also here I can hold Shift key to have ortho on, or I can turn ortho on directly pressing F8 on the keyboard. And this is gonna help me to create my ellipse pretty straight. And you can, of course, always use dynamic inputs to insert precise data. And then you have elliptical arc, but it's pretty much the same, except that we are creating an arc. And now I want to deactivate ortho, F8 again on my keyboard, so you can see that I am more free to create the elliptical arc. Okay, now these one here are a little bit more complex, and we will talk about this also later on. I'm just going to show you real quick what they do. But before we get into the gradient, I also want to show you some extra drawing tools that are right here on the bottom. And also, when you expand this extra tab, if you want, you can pin them so they will stay on until you unpin them again. So I want to leave them on like that. And let's get to the hatch. So hatch, it's a command which is used in industrial design, but also architecture, to fill an area. Now you can see I can roll over a shape, and this shape needs to be closed, otherwise it won't be filled with the pattern that we are choosing here. So this method is called pick points. So when we do pick points, we are clicking inside a shape to fill it with a particular hatch. Now, for example, let's select this one, and if I go down inside there, I'm filling this with a really fine hatch. Also that, and also that. But then we can also fix it later. Well, let me see here another type. So you can see we have many hatches if you click and you go down. And many of these are for sections when you have the section of a particular shape. Okay, so, well, I'm gonna click there, I'm gonna add it inside there, and there you go. So I can fill this shape. I can continue to pick also other shapes and continue, or I can just close the hatch creation. And again, we're gonna go back to talk about hatches in another lesson. This is just to show you all the tools here that you find in drawing. And also we have the gradient. Now gradient is similar to the hatch. I just need to click on a single closed object to create the gradient. Now the alternative is to go and select the boundaries. Well, if you don't have enough boundaries, like in this case, you can press enter. It's gonna tell you that you don't have boundaries there, so you cannot create this fill. Now I'm gonna use the line again. Well, actually, let me show you some extra drawing tools here. And these are two pretty important, I think. These are two types of splines. Now the first one is spline fit, the second one is spline CV, which stands for control vertices. So let's see what's the difference here. I'm gonna create them right here. So this is first one, and I also call this interpolation curve. So when you finish, press enter. Don't press ESC, otherwise it's gonna delete it. And you can see that when I select this, the points are inside the curve. And of course I can click on each point and I can move it up or down, I can adjust it. And also if I roll over, I can add an extra point. There you go. Or I can also remove fit points. There you go. Now let's create the second one, which is the spline control vertices. Now you can see that it's still a curve, it's still a spline. Again, press enter. But this time, if I select it, you can see that it's managed by these external points, external vertices. So these are not vertices or points that are inside, but they still control the curve, so they are called control vertices. And these two types, you can find it also in Rhino 3D or Rhinoceros. And you can click here and change it anytime from fit to control vertices. So don't worry about it. You can always go back and change it. And now I'm gonna create a nice closed spline. Now when you're near to the closing point, you can either click there and close. Now remember that all those green highlights, like this hand point here, those are snaps. So if I turn off the switch down here of the snaps, you won't see them anymore. So it will be more difficult to place that exactly in the endpoint. But sometimes we have here the answer down there. So I can click on close, and there it is. This is the perfectly closed shape, which could become a golf course or a lake. And I'm gonna add now a nice gradient. You can see here we have many different gradients. So if I select this and select objects, it's gonna apply it. Again, you have many ways you can apply this. And also we can change colors. Okay, now it looks like a stylized or vector graphics lake or something like that. Now I want to show you some other feature concerning the hatches and the gradients. Now I want to create here with the line, so not polyline, but with the line. And you can see it's difficult to close again, so I'm gonna turn off on the snap again, and this is F3. So F3 is gonna activate the snap. So this will help me to perfectly close that sequence of lines or segments. And again, I'm gonna click to hatch, select, well, let's fill it with a single solid color. There you go. So you have two methods to create this, pick points or select. Now if you do select, you will select all the boundaries. You can also go like that and press enter, and this is gonna create the hatch or the solid or the gradient, depends what you want to do. Let's move to the next one, which is gonna be boundary. And again, you can see we have pick points, and here we can choose to create polyline or region. And I'm gonna show you how we can do that. So we created here, well, you can also click and move the hatch or the gradient in another position, and you can see that it definitely looks like a polyline again. So the boundaries are like transformed into polyline. So I can kind of edit that edge there. So this is still a sequence of lines, so it's not a polyline. But what if I want to turn this into a polyline? It's pretty simple. So I use this one here, boundary. Pick points again, select the object type is gonna be the polyline. Say OK, and click inside there and press enter. Now you can see that this has become a polyline. So it's not anymore the, let me show you here. I need to move it this again. Okay, so you can see that there you have the original shape, and this is the new shape, which is a polyline. And again, let's select everything, go here, boundary, and we can do then also region. Now the region, again, it's something similar. So again, internal point, press enter, and there you go. So it doesn't have those extra midpoints that the polyline has, but it's still a closed shape. So let me go back here to hatch or gradient, and this time I'm just gonna have to select one single object. Okay, so we're gonna get back to those and make more practical example. So we will apply them to other objects in architecture or things like that, or industrial design. Now let's proceed here. We have also construction line, which is kind of an infinite line which goes both ways and both directions. So you can use this as a ruler or separation lines or whatever you want. And this one here, it's only going from one point to infinite. And you can also use this to create some nice perspective effect. Let's proceed here. We have points. So points are mono-dimensional, so they are only 1D. So we can use them as a snapping point using with the snap, but you need to activate the snap to the point. Right now we're just going to see what they are real quick, but remember that they can be used as a standalone vertices, and then you can use the line or the polyline to fit in some shape. You can also use, for example, here the 3 points. So you can use these 3 points to insert a circle there, but you need to activate the snap to the point. So we're gonna talk about snaps also later, but just go there. Well, in this case, they're gonna be called nodes. So you can see now I can create my circle here and place it in these 3 nodes. And let's continue here. We have the divide. Now, if you want to divide an element into, let's say, 4 parts or 5 parts, which needs to be the same length, you can do it with that command. You can do it with a line, you can do it with a spline. So let's use the spline here and click on to divide. Again, it's asking us to select it, and let's press 7, for example, and press enter. Now I'm gonna move it a little bit down there, and you can see there we have 7 points or nodes placed at equal distance. And you can see that better if you do that using a line. But let's use a line for another example. I'm gonna draw a line here, hold shift to use ortho, press ESC, and this time I'm gonna use the next one, which is measure. Now here you can set a measure, and it's gonna create a node or a point each time it's gonna arrive to that measure. So let's see here, right click, quick properties. This is almost 6,000, so let's say that it's 5,000 and something. So let's say that we want to divide this each 1,000 units. Press enter. Let's move it a little bit down there, click and drag. Okay, now you can see that the first are all 1,000, 1,000, 1,000, 1,000, 1,000, but the last one is a little bit shorter. So this is how this is gonna work. The other one, instead, you don't know the exact measure. You say, okay, I want to divide by 7, press enter, and it's gonna create those 7 divisions, but you don't really know what's the measure between one and the other. You need to create a line and figure it out. So I'm gonna do this and this, right click, select it, right click, quick properties. Well, you can see it's not perfectly 1,000. Okay, I think you have a clear idea of this other. And this is pretty useful when you need to insert then like something that needs to be evenly spaced, so that they need to have equal space between elements like pillars or beams, things like that. Okay, let's move on here. Something region, we already know what region is, but follow the instruction here and you can use that directly. This is another option. So converts area into a region object. Wipeout. Well, this is similar to the polyline. This is where when you want to hide something from the view. So for example here, let me see, I want to hide this phone. I'm gonna click there and create this thing just like a polyline. So I'm gonna close it, and this is applying like a patch above that object. Now you can always arrange things using layers, using arrangement tools, but this is what usually this one here is used for, is to hide something. 3D polyline. Now this is exact like a polyline, but you can do it in 3D, but we are not working here in 3D right now, we are working in 2D. But you can see, you can click there and snap to the 3D elements, not only the 2D elements. And then we have these donuts, which is, I don't know, an extra, it's kind of a double circle filled with an hatch or a solid hatch. So we need to, again, always read there, this is the inside diameter, and the outside diameter. So sometimes you can click and you will define the units or the measure. Sometimes you can insert the correct measure, but this time I just draw it. And you know, this is some extra thing that you can use. Don't really know for what, but you will find the use for that. And then we have these nice clouds that usually are used to review something. So let's say that something is wrong right there. I usually create a cloud and say, okay, be careful there. There's something you need to fix. This is why they are sometimes used. And this is kind of generating clouds. So you can create some really strange vector graphics or actual clouds if you want. If you are, I don't know, creating an elevation view, you want to place some trees or some clouds, you can use that. And that's it. So these are the drawing tools here in AutoCAD. Well, the beginning drawing tools, because we also have others that they have different functions, but let's say that these are the basic and standard. And with these ones, you can create basically anything. You can project and design anything you want, from architecture to really small, tiny objects, and also really big objects like golf courses or cityscapes or urbanistic plants and cities and so on. So this will be all for this lesson. If you enjoyed, please subscribe to the channel, support us by becoming a supporter and joining the channel, and you can write your comments, you can ask for assistance, you can also write suggestions to other users, and again, check our other videos and guides and courses in the channel. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.